وينشر الهدي إيمانا وموعظة فبالجهالة قد خابت مساعينا غابت مناقبنا واسود حاضرنا غابت مناقبنا واسود حاضرنا وأوشك اليأس أن يغشى أمانينا.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaban bikum. Welcome to another edition of the Sulaimaan Ravat show. Yes, we once again have in studio Brother Edris Khamissa, lifestyle coach or life coach if you like, counselor, marital counselor, educator, motivational speaker. We've already had a few discussions on marriage. We are already on to, I think it's now part 5. Yes, part 5 of the discussion on marriage. In part 4, we commenced with a discussion pertaining to some of the issues that can cripple the marriage. And in the last discussion, we spoke primarily about infidelity, about committing zina, adultery, the major form or the minor forms, and how to deal with it as the perpetrator, as the victim spouse as well. And towards the end of the last program, we spoke about pornography and its impact on marriage and how to deal with that. So those were the two major issues that we covered in the last discussion. In tonight's discussion, inshallah, we look forward to discussing physical violence and physical abuse, and also some of the other forms of abuse, and towards the latter part of the program a bit about financial issues and its impact on the marriage as well. Once again, Idris Bhai, always a pleasure. Jazakumullah for joining us. Viewers appreciating your messages of hope and inspiration, your advice and your motivation, and may Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala reward you, take you from strength to strength, and continue to accept you for the khidmah of humanity that you are doing currently. Still in job, mashallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Mullah, I'm glad you spoke about hope. This is the whole thing, you see. I think the listeners, or the viewers rather, need to understand that they must never give up on life. They must not give up on each other. They must understand there are so many possibilities. We are frail human beings. We are fallible human beings. We are going to make mistakes sometimes in our life. It's how we deal with that. And remember, you are not the first, you're not the last. Many people, many individuals who are marrying, who will marry, will also have the challenges. Some greater than yours, some may not so great as yours. But what is important, you find that it is your attitude that counts. So alhamdulillah, I do not want people listening to the program or watching the program becoming despondent. Say, Mummy, you heard Maulana Rawat and Uncle Idris speaking there. I don't want to get married. They're speaking about conflict management, whatnot. He said, no, be like Daddy and me. Don't Daddy and I get along so well. He says, yeah, because you and Mummy, you are so special. Yes.
Inshallah. Abuse, physical abuse, psychological abuse, mental abuse, emotional abuse, verbal abuse. Abuse in all of its forms, perhaps one of the most biggest, or one of the biggest challenges that couples face in their marriage.
Maulana, it is so true. I think one of the worst things ever, is on a daily basis where you abuse your spouse. And it's not only the man. Often women, if they have a strong personality, they're also guilty of that. So abuse from any person is unacceptable, because sometimes that abuse is worse than physical abuse, the mental abuse, the emotional abuse, the psychological abuse. When you are criticizing, condemning, disdaining, where you're ridiculing the person and the family. And one of the things that many people do not like, they dislike, and who will like this anyway, when you ridicule the other person's family. Say, you're silly like your mother. You say it as a joke. You have a good laugh, right? And you say, but I was just joking. You don't joke about these things. You don't joke about these things because feelings are sacred. There are some things that we treasure. You do not hurt people. We must use purring words, not words that are snarling. We must show sensitivity. We must understand that, and that is fundamental in any relationship. But abuse is becoming a recurring problem. And in fact, I say many people, the perpetrators of these abuses, often you find, if you look at them in real society, you find the image people have is an image of veneration and respect for these individuals. And some wives will tell you, if you tell the local Maulana or Alim or the community about my husband, they will not believe it. In fact, they'll say you are lying. He's such a good person. He's such an honorable person. So this shows me that you are a coward, a person that is not a man. A true man will never, ever do that. And a true woman will also never do these things. So what I'm saying to you, what are you doing now? Look back at it. Imagine you are in the twilight years of your life. You're looking back at your life. Can you say with any degree of assurance, or you can say with conviction, my gosh, I am so happy I abused my wife for the rest of, for so many years of her life. And then remember this, marriage is one institution. If your partner is unhappy, then you are also unhappy. I've yet to come across and say, I am happy that my partner is suffering. Then you are not a human being. You do not even reflect that kind of attitude. You're a beast. And I say this because it is unacceptable. You cannot believe it sometimes when you hear the stories of the kind of abuse some people perpetrate.
Verbal abuse, perhaps the most common, because it's obviously also the easiest to carry out. Where does it stem from? Why do people verbally abuse each other in marriage and in life in general? One is obviously when you talk about verbal abuse, people think about vulgarity and that kind of unacceptable language. But verbal abuse is also about the tone, the sarcasm, the cynicism, saying hurtful things, reminding people about hurtful things.
Yes, it is quite a comprehensive thing. And why do people do this? They do it because sometimes out of revenge. They do it because they become control freaks. They do it because they want to suppress the other person. They do it because they are selfish and insensitive. And verbal abuse is perhaps one of the most common things. Sometimes you say it, and what you said is so true, is the timing of those comments. What may be appropriate some other time may not be appropriate now. The tone in which you speak. These are all fundamental things. And you find this is sometimes, you might, on an occasion or so, without you knowing it, perhaps unwittingly hurt your partner. But when your partner raises it, says, but darling, I did not know when I say this, when I call you shorty, for example, for example, that you get hurt. But you say to him, but lots of people call you shorty. He said, they call me shorty, right? They do not know how they hurt me. But you are the last person. I think if we understand that all of us are different, that we need to discuss these things. So verbal abuse is number one there. It's something painful. It can affect a person. It affects a person's self-esteem. It affects your attitude. And most importantly, it affects the relationship.
It's also easy to perpetrate in the sense that it doesn't leave scars like the physical abuse, and at times it's not. At times it's the intensity, but at times it's perhaps the regularity, the long period of time over which this just continues, and it's almost like you batter that person verbally until there's nothing left of that person.
Absolutely. What happens? And that person becomes numb. It becomes completely. Responds in a way that is unbecoming. Sometimes the person, this stone walls, does not say anything. There is a time when the person says, but why are you saying this? And the person realizes, I'm wasting my time. Because what I found here is not a human being, but a beast who persists, who is relentless. Because you know why? Because I am helpless. You find the same individual will not do it outside. It reminds me of something a bit lighthearted, There was this one person in the days of the horses in the United States of America. So he went to this bar, and he went there and he came outside. He noticed that his horse was painted red, right? And my friend Sulaimaan told me this joke, right? So anyway, he goes back into the bar and he tells the people, I want to know who's the guy who painted my horse red. He saw no one standing up, so he plucked up more courage, because at the back of his mind, he remembers the words of his wife. You're not a hero. Why didn't you fight people your size? So when he said it the first time, no one got up. So now he plucked up more courage. He So, well, I want to know who's the guy who painted my horse red. I want you to stand up right now. So no one stood up. The third time went louder. Then one guy with his muscles touching the ceiling said to him, well, I'm the guy who painted the horse red. What are you going to do about it? So, well, I just came to tell you the horse is dry and is ready for a second coat. So what I'm saying, the same individual at home is harsh, is rude, but outside when he tried out once, when someone bigger than him stood up, he suddenly became apologetic. This is the whole point. What I find almost this kind of dichotomy, this discrepancy between the attitude at home and the attitude outside. The attitude outside is one of calmness, one of respect, a person that displays social etiquette, but here he shows rudeness, he's uncouth, and he goes completely against the grain. What Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam spoke about, when Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam reminded us, far worse to break the Kaaba is to break the heart of a believer. You know.
How do you respond to a person who would say, okay, I think I've got a sharp tongue, but I've got a clean heart?
Yeah, but that's the point. The point is this, you don't expect others to guess that. It's a very important thing. The thing here is there must be no discrepancy between your speech and what's in your heart. When a person smiles at you, Maulana, you feel connected with him because you feel, and if he's sincere, his heart. Allah forbid, when a person smiles at you, because of the person's reputation precedes him, he says, don't think you can beguile me by your smile. That's an important thing. Our actions must match our words. Our words must match what's in our heart. There must be purity in our hearts. We must regard the feelings of our spouses as sacred. We must regard them as not only sacred, but you've got to make sure every time, every word we speak, the tone we use, the voice modulation, we are circumspect. And when we discuss things, when we disagree agreeably. We do not strip the other person of the person's dignity. We love the person, but despise the action.
How do you go about resolving this? It's so common in marriage and outside of marriages where people cannot control their tongues. And, people they don't have that much of intelligence and tolerance to be able to wait for the right time and say what they want to say in the right way at the right place.
This requires, Maulana, a lot of self-discipline, right? There are many recommendations to make, right? Now, you and I, we know each other. You and I know if I'm walking in a particular route, in my discussion with an individual, there's a great chance I might raise my tone of my voice. I might say something. Stay far from it. Secondly, before you say anything, read Surah Ikhlas, make some zikr, count up to 5, 7, 9, whatever it is. Make sure you do not do it. And it requires tremendous discipline. Because what often happens, if you are used to doing things with impunity, let us say, for example, you are the CEO of this company. People working under you are afraid of you. You intimidate them. They are so dependent on you for the job, as it were, so you throw abuse at them. But you must realize, although you, in your own way, might justify that attitude, but you cannot take the same persona to your workplace. Or on the other extreme, at the workplace, because you're so calm, right? But beneath the calmness is a subterranean aggression, anger. What you do? You want to unleash it at home. To whom? To your wife, who is a person that is helpless, a wife that is impotent in terms of responding to it, a wife that cannot challenge you. So what you are, all in all, you are a coward. And I think it brings me down to another factor. The factor is, I think, sometimes when we are getting into the institution of marriage, we must understand fully what it entails. We must understand exactly how we should behave. We must know exactly what we should be doing differently. And parents themselves must take full responsibility. If you know that your son is temperamental, make sure he goes for anger management. If you have allowed him to say whatever he wants to say, make it very clear to him that we have accepted it from you, which is unacceptable. We have condoned it, which is unacceptable. But you are marrying someone else's daughter. You cannot, we will not protect you when you continue that particular manner. This attitude, some parents have, no, he's a growing child, what can we do? This is how he behaves, right? But he's a good kid. Essentially, he's a good kid. I remember this incident some years ago, and may Allah forgive the boy. And I went to visit this one particular family, and this boy, they were playing cards with his father, So he was cheating his father, So when his father cheated once, right? And I'm a visitor to this home. The son saw his father F and B's. He saw him. Really? Really? And the father tried to laugh it off. He's telling me, Idris, he'll grow out of it. I said, but when the son went away, I said, you cannot condone this kind of thing. You see what happens sometimes? You may think something a child is saying is just an aberration, is making an innocent mistake, but the message you're giving the child, you can speak the way you want to speak, to whomever you want to speak.
What about the victims of verbal abuse? What advice can you give them?
I think a very important thing is this. In life, you have no control how a person responds to you, but you're in complete control how you respond to that person. You can respond to a person with calmness and dignity. You can respond with that way, or you can respond with anger. You can also give vent to your own anger, right? You can do that, or your own vitriol. The critical thing for me is to show that maturity, right? To maintain your calmness and dignity. Because the person that is throwing the abuse, what is he looking for? He's looking for some kind of reaction. He wants to press a button somewhere, right? He does it, right? So you need to show your own calmness. But the important thing is this. You do not allow him to do it with impunity. The matter has to be resolved. It is unacceptable. Discussions must take place. If need be, parties on either side need to come there, and this abuse must be reported. If you have tried everything in your own power to resolve the issue, to discuss things amicably, yet the individual continues with impunity.
The next form of abuse, I suppose, one above that is emotional abuse, psychological abuse, mental abuse. Some would say that these all refer to one and the same thing. Others would say there are perhaps slight differences between them. How would you define this category of abuse?
You see, like psychological abuse, when you're playing games with the minds of people, when you're playing games, when you create expectations, when you kill those expectations, right, psychologically, what happens then, the person themselves, is you build up an expectation, you drop them dead, and suddenly, from utter anticipation of joy, they go down to the opposite side of depression, right, of humiliation. This is what often happens, where it's often a person teasing the other individual, right? When it comes to emotional abuse, when you're playing with people's feelings, right? Because when a person's feelings are aroused, right? When, for example, you even make promises, the feelings are aroused, because we are a holistic human being, right? That's what we all are. We are holistic. We respond holistically to a situation, right? I mean, if you prick me here, it affects my mind. It affects me physically. It affects me mentally, right? Because I'm affected. Why have you done this, right? Mentally, it affects me. So all of this is interrelated. Now, and this is important. This is very, very critical. And once you do that, what message are you giving? The message you're giving to the individual, I don't respect you. I can tease you. I can humiliate you. You are there like a commodity. I can treat you the way I want to treat you. I can put the switch on and off. I'm in control. I'm in control. In fact, this is the irony of it all. People that abuse others are not in control. That's why they do that. In fact, they have a low self-esteem. People low self-esteem have this attitude of controlling because they want to be in charge, for fear because they're vulnerable. Many people use anger to hide their own inadequacies. Many people use that abuse to hide who they really are. But it takes a real decent human being who's able to explore and to talk about his feelings at a particular time, to understand it, to introspect and to reflect. They do not do that. What they do not understand, this is it, that marriage is, as I said, and I say it again, is a sacred institution. In fact, if your spouse thinks lovingly of you, is positive about you when you die, and prays for you, I have no doubt in my mind, Allah will forgive you. I have no doubt in my mind, inshallah, you'll attain Jannah. Because it's not about a person in which, you're ingratiated to in public. You're not doing it for self-enrichment. You're doing it because you really believe that marriage is important and I need to treat my wife accordingly and treat her with dignity and respect.
At times, one gets concerned that the victim here, or the person who perceives themselves to be the victim from the two spouses, can maybe be a bit hasty in concluding that they are the victims of emotional abuse, simply because it's not as easy to detect, like verbal abuse or physical abuse, which is quite, obvious and it's quite clear and distinct. You may sometimes think that a person is emotionally abusing you or he is psychologically abusing you, but that might not necessarily be the case.
Yeah, often what happens is this, and I'm glad you mentioned the point. Remember, the way I see you, wherever you go, a lot depends on how I see myself. If I am an insecure individual, if I have low self-esteem, then I'll view your actions with suspicion. I might read more to it than what is there. I might look for deeper underlying undertones. I might say, why did he turn his head that way? I've seen many cases, and they want to interpret that. And they said, yes, he did it twice. That means he's rejecting me. So on and so forth. Mm-hmm. You jump to conclusions. What often happens, and you write about this, you speculate. But yet that same individual, when their self-esteem is enhanced, or if they had high self-esteem, they would deal with the situation a different way. Because they themselves have got dignity. They do not need the other person to enhance the self-esteem. They feel good about who they are. They realize they are a unique creation of Allah. I do not require His affirmation. I do not require His acknowledgement, right? I do not require any one of these things or His attention to make me feel good. And that's fundamental. Because as I said in the beginning, when it comes to marriage, it's not only a journey with another individual, it's a journey with yourself. You get to know your own threshold. You get to know also how you deal with the other person. Because the first time in your life, in terms of the bedroom, you're sharing this intimacy with a stranger, in inverted commas, a person who's sharing his life with you.
Is neglect, emotional neglect, a form of abuse? Because today when you look at people who are less than satisfied in their marriages, there are ample cases where there's no verbal abuse, there's no physical abuse, there's no infidelity, there's no financial issues. It's just that, the pressures of this age, in the case of a man, for example, take Gauteng, 2 hours to drive to work. And then you work an 8-hour day, 2 hours to drive back. That's just to put bread on the table and to provide for a roof and shelter. The woman, on the other hand, there are many women who are working these days to supplement the income. Then you've got the kids, you've got the chores of the house. You might not find yourself in an ideal situation either because of those, factors, or sometimes it's just pure, indifference where you're too focused on your hobbies and your friends and family and everything else, where emotionally there's a disconnect. You like living under the same roof, but people in a hotel, 2 different rooms. You can hear each other, you're next to each other, you're doing everything simultaneously, you eat together, you go out together, but there's an emotional disconnect. You're not there for each other emotionally.
Mm-hmm. You see, there are 2 points. The one point is this, that really we are living at the time where we live a life of frenetic energy. It's a life of frenzy, making one appointment to the other. The conundrum of life, the traffic log jams, the issues at work, a whole range of things. And you cannot come out unscathed from it. Therefore, when you come home, you require, when you leave your coat, when you change your dressing at home, it's almost disrobing from that world, now coming to a place of harmony, a sanctuary at home. It's saying, now I'm a place of love and warmth, right? But you require that. There may be some residue at the beginning. You need the spirit of calmness. So the issue here is this, that has a direct impact. So if you are a housewife or a mother staying at home, you need to understand that perspective, a world in which you may not be exposed to. For example, give your husband an opportunity to unwind, so thereafter he can respond to your needs accordingly. That's one aspect. So therefore, I often say my recurring theme is to have a routine. In that routine, the man can say, from this point onwards, I'm able to respond to your needs. I need that. The other important aspect is part of communication. Not only communication, asking yourself, what do all human beings need? That's the bottom line. What are the needs of all human beings? They want shelter. They want to be protected physically. They want intimacy. They want aesthetic togetherness. They want to enjoy beautiful things together. They want intellectual togetherness. They want to discuss things seriously together. They want spiritual togetherness. They want to connect with Allah, beloved Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And they want emotional togetherness, where they want to share their feelings. And you're right. You're right. One of the ironies of life, Maulana, is this. The same individual who says, I travel 2 hours, I come up and down, and my wife is making demands on me. It's not fair. He's not fair. You listen to him and you'll agree with him. You listen to him because, yes, he's sincere. You listen to him because this is the tale of many a man in today's society. A man that has additional burdens to bear. The burdens of the economic climate, a whole range of things. But the same man, when he learns that his wife has passed away or is dying, he regrets. Suddenly his life stops. Suddenly his life is put in a truer perspective. His life is balanced. Suddenly tears flow. And when his wife is sick, he makes a commitment, Ya Allah, when she gets better, I want to give a major part of my life to her. Then we are those animals that have a bout of amnesia. Then that other individual, when it's irretrievable, you cannot change, she's gone. She's gone. And I've met many people who regret it. I've yet to come across, Maulana, any man. Statistically, women outlive us. I've yet to come across any man, right? And I pray there are many men. Many individual who has no regrets. They say, you know what? I could have spent more time with her. She was there. She was like a garment to me. She protected me. She was there in the difficult times. She never abused me. She took care of the money. She lived a very modest life. She made no demands on me. I never told her I loved her. I never spent time with her. I never walked with her anywhere. I never spent pleasurable moments with her. I remember, when I did this program in the UK, and this is very emotional, I did this program in the UK. I showed them 9 photographs of families. 9 photographs at random. Different photographs. The one photograph of a father and the son on top of him. I said, doesn't he remind you of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam? The other one, the father got the child on top of him and he's helping the little baby. The mother, on another picture, helping the daughter. And there was one picture. I said, in how many homes this exists? Where the mother, husband and wife are sitting opposite each other on a couch, right? Looking at each other's eyes, and perhaps there's coffee or tea there. Do you spend time someday, every day, when the kids are asleep, and telling your wife, Allah bless you, Allah look after you, Allah bless you? Do you do this? We don't. We don't do this, Maulana. And then we regret it. And I asked them, they looked at it. I think amongst all the people, only one person, that picture could resonate with him. What's holding us back? All the other things about work are excuses, Maulana. All the other things are excuses. Our children want our time. We do not spend time. Our children look at us, the way we treat our wives. What message are we giving them? What message? We can abuse them. They're like shackles. They got no feelings. Our attitude can be obnoxious or repugnant. So our message to everyone, reflect on your own relationship at home. If you're the wife or the husband, my brother and my sister, reflect on it and ask yourself, what are your regrets going to be? You know what your regrets are going to be. Say, Ya Allah, I can do it now. I'll stop it now. For a believer, there is no tomorrow. It is only now. N-O-W, now. Do it, do it, do it, because your tears in the graveyard will do nothing.
Indeed, profound words, Edris. I hope that viewers, take that plea to heart and do an introspection, analyze and say, right now in my life, what are the things that I see that potentially I would regret, and let me try and change the tide of things to ensure that I don't end up regretting it.
In fact, Maulana, I tell you one thing, right? In fact, every human being knows whether he's leading a balanced life or not. Every human being knows that when he looks at his wife, whether he has any regrets or guilt, when she looks at him, is she shortchanging him and him vice versa? We all know it. When we look at our children, we know exactly who we are. You don't have to go for a workshop. You need to make some incremental changes, and you must do it now, inshallah.
Inshallah.
أوشك اليأس أن يغشى أمانينا فبالجهاد بنى الإسلام قوته.
Physical abuse. Unfortunately, it was a thing that not very long ago, one could say was alien to the Muslim community. You would have the rare case here and there. Not anymore.
It is very sad. And I was sharing this episode with a brother earlier on, when one sister contacted me. She says, brother, I need help. And I tried to arrange a meeting, and then she sends me another message, a WhatsApp message. She said, brother, it's okay. There's no need for help. My husband just broke my leg. I'm in hospital. And look at that. Really. And I cried, What kind of beast of man is this? Yet, and I often say this, if he says that's his temperament, the irony of it all, no person outside believes that that man could do it, because the workplace is somewhere else, is somebody else. He's a loving, compassionate, caring, sensitive individual who shows sensitivity to other people. Then who are you? You're a coward, you're a liar. Right? In the confines of the home, only who is there besides your wife? Allah is there. Right? You're more concerned about the community out there than Allah. So because Allah is not in your heart, you would do that. And what is worse, if you have an issue, and sometimes we all have issues, right, in terms of anger, do something about it. There is remedy for it. We are told, if you're standing, sit down. If you're sitting, lie down. Make wuzu. There's so many things we are told about it. We are told about anger. Anger is one word away from danger. You're like an intoxicated man, throwing abuse. And children watching this, they begin to despise you. They hate you with a passion. And they say, Ya Allah, why was I born in this home? To see this abuse? My father treating my mother like this, or my mother treating my father like this. And you're right, physical abuse, there are external signs on the face. And one of the ironies of it all, many a woman, she'll protect her husband. She say, no, I fell down. What happened? No, I fell down. I fell down. And sadly, many of the women blame themselves. No, it's not my fault. It's not my husband's fault. It's my fault. I say, no, sister, that's not your fault. Nothing can be so provocative that a man raises his hands on you.
Many times one finds in such a situation that the woman, because again, when it comes to physical violence, most of the time the perpetrators are male, that the woman feels that, okay, what he's doing is wrong. It hurts me. It affects me physically. But I don't want to expose him because of the children. I don't want to expose him because I don't have anywhere to go. So they go into this mode of tolerating, and that just gives him carte blanche.
Yes, it's a very good point you raise. And it's a message I want to give to sisters. Remember, in the end, no matter your husband has been providing food and shelter, Allah is a provider. Allah is a provider. You've got to believe in that. You should not allow anyone to throw abuse at you, no matter who he is, no matter how powerful he is. And because he knows that you'll be quiet, you're not going to go anywhere, you're going to protect him, he'll continue to do it. That's such a coward that he is. So I think it's very critical. She needs to assert herself. Therefore, it's very important. The moment there are first signs of abuse in the marriage, deal with it there and there. Nip it in the bud. Otherwise, you'll be living a recurring nightmare.
What advice would you give to the perpetrators? There are those who may be watching right now who are hitting their wives.
I think they need to go for counseling. They need to seek help. They need to talk about it, because revealing is healing. There's the beginning of a cure. To go to people, to go to a psychiatrist, to go to a Muslim psychologist, or go to a person of faith. Be a non-Muslim also, who understands. You don't have to be, and even an atheist knows violence is unacceptable in any form whatsoever. You don't have to be a believer to know that, right? So I think he needs to seek for that help, because he's becoming uncontrollable, right? And as a result, what he is doing, he's destroying himself, and he might completely annihilate his whole family,
What about the aspect of violence, begetting violence? You get a boy or a child who grows up in that home where the father abuses the mother, and then at some time in his life ends up following in the footsteps of dad.
Often you find this is a recurring pattern, right? When children themselves, if they grew up in an abusive relationship, they know nothing else. They do not know how to negotiate. So this becomes a recurring pattern in their life. Now, there's hope for everybody. Why? Because you reach an age of reasoning. You realize that what your mom and dad have done is wrong. In fact, I would encourage young people, really, I would encourage all young people. The moment your father lays his hands on your mother, I want you to defend your mother, right? Without being abusive to your father. In fact, you should speak to your father, maybe at a time when he shows more calmness, to say to him, Daddy, what you did is wrong. It's unacceptable. We're not going to allow this. We're not going to allow this, Daddy. It's wrong. You cannot do this to Mommy. You cannot do this to Mommy. And I think it's important. Sometimes what is worse, when these young boys become young adults, when they are in a position to assert themselves, but they do nothing of that sort. Because why? Sometimes it's a father still giving them the money. Right? So he owns them. He owns their heart, their soul. And I think it's important. And violence can beget violence. And you find this is a recurring pattern, but it doesn't have to be that way.
Well, you are watching the Sulaimaan Ravat Show. A guest in studio this evening, Brother Edris Khamissa. We are still continuing our discussion on marriage. It's already part 5. And we're talking about some of those factors that cripple the marriage. And we commenced this program by talking about abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse, verbal abuse. We've covered some of the key areas there. Another issue that, especially in today's time and age, that really cripples a marriage is finance. And financial related tensions and financial related conflict. What's the nature of this conflict in particular?
In fact, Maulana, just for the information of the viewers, there are 4 main reasons why marriages break up. 4 main reasons, but there are others that are many. There are 100 odd other reasons. Some of them you could subsume under these headings. The one is finance. The other is the in-laws. The third one is infidelity. And the fourth one is when the mother and father have a difference of opinion how to bring up the child. So there's 4 main reasons, right? Now let's look at finance. Finance is a very important aspect. Now, finance could play its hands in different ways. The one is when the wife, for example, does not get enough money to sustain herself or the home, right? Yet the man can afford it. The other aspect is this: the wife has absolutely no knowledge of the earnings of the husband. Now one can argue, should she know about it? Should she not know about it? Right? The whole aspect of budgeting. The wife has no role in the budgeting. Many women I speak to, they say we find it very, very hard to ask our husbands for something for our own personal effects. Now, should her husband, for example, besides giving her the money for the food and the clothing, give her an X amount for her personal self? Now, these are questions to be asked. And you find women, many of them, because out of dignity, will not ask their husband for the money, right? And the man shows no sensitivity to the needs of the wife. And as a result, you say, if you want anything, you come to me. Now, these have many, many ramifications. Because marriage is a partnership, right? And you find that for me, my own understanding is this, that whilst if you are, for example, in a business with your brothers, it's a different dynamic at play, right? I think you may not be obliged to share everything what's going on in the business. That's another matter, right? Now, for example, should your wife know how much you're getting paid? Of course, I believe that. She should know that. And then say, listen, darling, I get paid X amount. Let's say I get paid, say, 30,000 rands, for example, or amount, right? What are our expenses? Let's work it out. Let's work out everything in that way, right? We need to save, say, 10% and work it out. Now, in that way, there's shura taking place, there's mutual understanding, and she would understand that, you know what, I don't want to exploit the situation. It's not fair for me to ask my husband to take me out to eat every other day, and so on and so forth. So that creates respect and a sense of responsibility. There's responsiveness and responsibility. Finance is a real issue in many, many marriages. You find, on the other hand, I remember this, and, may Allah bless her. There's a lady, Mrs. Wahid, and we used to, many of us used to eat at her place. We are students. Many of my friends used to eat at her place. And I remember when she passed away, may Allah grant her the high status in Jannah.
Ameen, ameen.
And the husband, imagine, a few months, and he passed away soon after her. He was saying to us, boys, when you went to pay our respects, he said, boys, only Allah knows how my wife used to come out. I used to give her my salary. How she coped, only Allah knows. And he was crying. She never asked me for a cent. She never demanded anything from me. Look at that. That shows her maturity. And really, when we used to eat at a place, there was barakah there. She believed in Allah. So an important thing is this, that we must look at the finances, the facts, number one. We need to pray for barakah. We need to read Surah Waqia. We need to read a life that is simple, a life that is humble. Maulana Yunus Patel always spoke about that. He said, if you can lower your standard of living, then you'll have no needs. Our needs are really wants, isn't it? Because you're competing with the others. Or they went for holiday, we need to do the same thing. Or what kind of husband are you? Right? Your brother takes his wife often. What about you? The needs are different. So what is important, that we need to look at money as an issue. It can become an issue, but not in all cases. Because I feel there are more compelling reasons why people separate than money. It ought not to be money.
One of the issues that we find on the increase these days is the woman who out-earns or earns more than the husband. And you've got the husband who comes from this background where generally the man is the guy, is the spouse or the partner that brings in the majority of the income, if not all of the income. And there's a degree of control that is associated with that. There's a degree of authority that is associated with that. And now all of a sudden he feels subservient. And that becomes an obstacle in many ways. It breeds a degree of resentment, and we see that on the increase in today's time and age, with more and more females pursuing careers and pursuing different options when it comes to earning income.
You see, again, this is another important area for discussion. It could be two things. Number one, if your situation as the man of the house, you can bring X amount of money, you've tried everything possible, the woman should respect that. And you should also have self-respect. That's critical. Now, if your wife brings in more money, right, and to her, if she has the maturity, she knows it comes from Allah, it doesn't affect the relationship or dynamic. She puts the money together. She says, you know what, let us use this money together for the household. But this X amount of money, I'll keep, whatever, no issue. But if the woman constantly rebukes, chastises, reprimands, and demeans her husband, make him feel like he's useless, he's fit for nothing, that's another situation. And when that situation prevails, then relationship can become adversarial. Because what happens, the man is stripped of his manhood, right? He loses that manhood. He's no more the man of the house. And she says, well, I'm bringing the money, I'll do whatever I want. You are useless. Now, can you imagine that? Now, the woman thinks she's in control. But really, if you are demonizing your partner, how can you be happy? Right? And I'll give you my own example. Again, alhamdulillah. When my wife and I got married, my wife had a job as a pharmacist, We worked together, to buy a home, alhamdulillah. And Allah bless her for sacrifice that she has made. And I think we need to recognize it. Everyone's situation is completely different. So we need to have goals. We need to have aspirations. Now, it's different, for example, and I've seen it in many homes, where a man demands from his wife, you must buy me a car. You must do this, you must do that. He does little or no work, right? And constantly does it all the time, right? And what happens? The woman comes a point in her life, dad and mom tell her that he's abusing you. Why are you continuing in this relationship? So the point is, there must be balance, there must be respect. You do not exploit the weakness of the other, or you not capitalize on the weakness of the other,
That obviously is in terms of the woman who's earning more than the husband.
Yeah.
And the woman who's not earning more than the husband, but still her needs are such that are not proportionate to what he can earn. And then she makes him feel inadequate. Times are tough. People are struggling for jobs. Unemployment rate is so high. Sometimes you're just lucky to have a job. You're just lucky to be earning something. You're just lucky not to be living on somebody else's handouts or to be taking welfare. And you're bringing in hard-earned, honest money. You're not doing what others are doing, which is unethical and illegal and impermissible. And now you're faced with a wife who's constantly moaning, comparing to her sister or to her sister-in-law, making you feel that you can't even you can't even provide for your own wife and children. You can't even meet their own needs. You feel worthless.
There are many examples, growing examples like this, and I think it shows again the woman's insensitivity and lack of compassion. This can lead to depression. It can really kill the spirit of that individual who's working his butt out to bring food to the table. There's no acknowledgement and appreciation. They say comparisons are odious, She should also compare herself to the other beautiful wife of that individual who is humble, who is pleasant, who understands the risk comes from Allah, that she's not making demands. So you mustn't be selective about your morality and your standards, right? If you're comparing your man to another person, why don't you compare yourself to another person that is worthy of Allah's affection, right? And Allah's love and compassion. This is the important thing. And we need to understand that. That is fundamental. And therefore, why do these problems arise? Again, going back to the first thing we spoke about, we need to have premarital counseling. So a woman can say, to a man, well, I'm marrying you. I was born in this home. We went for a holiday once a year overseas, and you're going to do that. The man said, brother, I can take you to Zoo Lake. Zoo Lake wants some at it. And that too, might have to hitch a lift there. You know what I'm saying to you? And then she must decide, I regard this as fundamental, my need. Well, we're not getting married. Therefore, I think in all of the things we spoke on, Maulana, it's about, again, talking openly about what makes you feel good, what makes you important, what is it that you are looking for in the marriage. For example, a woman might say, well, I'm marrying you, right? And I want you to have 3 servants there. I don't intend to cook for you, right? Nothing. But I want to have I worked hard, I want to have a relaxed life, right? And then suddenly what happened, they spoke about the expectations. There's discrepancy between the pure, unrealistic, romantic notion of marriage and compared to the prosaic reality. And I think this is the point. Therefore, I admire those people, no matter what background they come from, affluent or otherwise, who show dignity throughout, whose tastes are easy to satisfy, who are not grudging in the way they do things. And they say to the partner, let's you and I work together, inshallah. And Allah, inshallah, will give us barakah. And inshallah, Allah will take us for Hajj, inshallah. And these are things that we can do together.
Finally, on this issue of finance, you get that man then who sponges off his wife, as they would say in slang terms. Whether she's earning in a formal sense, or whether she's doing little samosas and baking or whatever from the home, he seems to be hoarding, or he seems to be spending on mags and sound system for the car, and putting a burden on his wife that's just not fair.
Again, Maulana, for me, when I listen to your quest, I say, Maulana, you have a very deep insight into what is happening in the community. I've seen this mothers slogging whole day in the kitchen, baking pies, making samosas, making meals, to bring food to the table, right? And the man is gambling, for example, showing no compassion for her, not even saying, okay, let's do something, let's celebrate, let me take you out for the weekend. Nothing. Using her money. She has to use the money now even for the upkeep of the home. And he is using it for his personal pleasure, as you rightly said. Now, what kind of marriage is this? What kind of marriage? What message are you giving to your wife? You're saying to her, I'm a parasite. I will sponge off you. I do not. If you loved your wife, you'll never do that. You'll never do that. In fact, you tell her, darling, let me help you. You're on your feet the whole day. Show me how to make those samosas. Let me help. Let it be a dynamic partnership, you know.
Idris bhai, as always, a pleasure talking to you. Jazakumullah. We'll continue the discussion, inshallah. We still got quite a bit of ground to cover on this topic of marriage before we move on to other topics as well, inshallah. But I look forward to the next discussion.
Inshallah. May Allah bless you, Maulana. Amen. And I think, you know what, I like to believe we shared with the viewers lots of lessons to be learned. I pray, inshallah, they embrace it, they translate it into day-to-day reality, and they go home, they say, this is my shushu babulina. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi
wa assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Well, viewers, that brings us to the end of part 5 of our discussion on marriage, inshallah. When Idris bhai has some time, we'll talk a little bit more, and then we'll move on to a few other aspects pertaining to marriage. Fi amanillah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
فالمسجد الأقصى ما زال يدعونا ندي على الفتية الأحرار في زمن أضحى به الحق بالخذلان.